was a baby, he used to be very solemn, very good.
Aren't they handsome?
He'd stand up very stiff when he had brand new clothes on, and tell him to turn around. He'd turn around and pose for you, take another picture of him. He'd go to school. He'd come back just as clean as he went to school, not a hair out of place. And his brother'd come back with the clothes falling off all the time.
There wasn't a whole lot of common things between the two of us.
Tim was always straight-laced.
He was an A student.
High school in the morning and UCLA in the afternoon.
And he was my watchdog as I was growing up. Made sure I always did everything right.
They got along pretty good. They didn't fight too much, at least not around us.
Now, we were perfect angels.
And Mark and Tim were always digging to China.
And dig some foxholes and put plywood down over the top and throw old grass and dirt on it. And my parents had their sailboat and we'd go to Catalina all the time. I almost seemed like every other weekend.
They were both very good with the sailing.
One year, my parents bought us some
Those swimsuits were diving suits.
wetsuits. We'd go diving for abalone. I don't think you can even get abalone off of Catalina anymore. It's been so picked out. But
We cooked it there on the boat.
and we'd take the dog, our dog Sheba, and we'd go sleep on the beach and sleep in bags.
And they were ashore trying to sleep, and the dog was barking at the pigs. They have a lot of wild pigs over at Catalina.
Just looking for trash or anything that was left out. And that was back in the days when people would dig a hole and put their trash in the beach and stuff, you know. And
The dog was barking at the pigs, trying to save the boys. And the boys were screaming at us out on the boat to come and get the dog, because the dog was barking so much that they couldn't go to sleep.
that was some exciting times for kids to be able to do that.
I think on the outside, people would just look at him and say geek, but for those of us that are, that was one of the things we really loved about him.
Well, he made his own stereo system. He built his own amplifier and everything. Everything was the old stuff with tubes. And
There are some engineers who can design well, and there are some for whom it is an art form. And for your dad, it was definitely an art form.
He'd come home and try to explain to us what the computer was all about. Come home with reams of paper, and he'd try to explain to them what was going on. And how they put it together, I don't know.
You would make a suggestion to him, and he never really said much after that. And then a little while later, he'd come out with this solution that was just way more than you had ever expected in the solution of the problem.
And things would go wrong. He would come over and help me fix my phone jack once that went bad, and he figured out that it was a phone jack in my garage.
You could call him up and ask him, and he would help. I mean, no matter what time it was, no matter, it didn't matter. He could be in the middle of anything, and he would just help you, and I'm going to miss that.
When my little robot toy made out of Legos, it broke, and I asked Papa to fix it.
Well, first of all, we're soulmates. We were from the beginning.
We had this wonderful apartment in Westwood with a big bay window and a little Romeo and Juliet balcony that looked out onto the apartment next door.
Right. And lo and behold,
who lived in the apartment next door?
Tim and Cliff. And Cliff started befriending Jan, and through their kind of little courtship, Cliff invited Jan to dinner. Except Cliff didn't cook. Tim did the cooking, so then they figured they better invite the roommate.
Right. We invited Susan to come over, and Susan and Tim met that evening,
and then we just became friends, Tim and I.
Right.
Until we got friendlier. And then Tim and I were roommates. Cliff went to South America.
And I went to San Francisco. Right.
We got married June 17th in 1973. And she was
Susan's maid of honor. And Cliff, at the last minute, flew in from
Ecuador,
from Costa Rica
where he lived. Rick Odinsky was his scheduled best man.
That's right.
What happened? I'm walking down the aisle. It was just Jan and I see two best men standing next to Tim, Rick and Cliff. and we got married,
Right.
and Jan and I have been friends ever since. And this is what I read to Tim on our wedding day. Once I loved the wind as it blew down from the mountains over the land. Once I loved the touch of the sun almost as much as the touch of a hand. And once I loved the smell of the sea, the feel of the waves rolling over me, sea and sand, air and sky. Once I loved, once I loved. Once I loved all of God's things that grow on the earth and cover the land. Air and sky, sea and sand. Once I loved, but never till now.
We went to Lake Havasu in 1987 and 1989, rented a boat, a party boat, and we had our small ski boat, and we spent a week together. Well, you get to know each other really well when you're on that on a party boat like that.
And everybody was pretty much sound asleep, and one of the traditional Lake Powell killer storms came up in the middle of the night and had spun us completely around from the shore so that the motor was dug into the shore. I woke up and I see someone on top of the boat with a flashlight, and it's Tim. He's trying to single-handedly turn the whole boat around by himself without even trying to wake us up. That was Tim for you, though. You know, just that was going to the rescue and trying to take care of things.
After docking the boat, a bunch of them went to take this little hike. And on the way back, they had stumbled on some bees.
I don't know what they were, but they were just like enormous man-eating bugs.
They were running so fast.
You know, elbows and knees as fast as he could. Like,
All you saw was knees and elbows coming out. I mean, they were just running. So that's all you saw was just knees and elbows because, man, their legs were kicking up so high and their elbows were kicking up so high. It was hysterical. It was a classic. It was such a classic. It was great.
Most of all, it is the ski trips that I remember about Tim.
We went on a family ski vacation to Telluride, Colorado. We all had lessons, and they like immediately, I think, had Tim in about an intermediate. I was, of course, was in beginner, and the boys were in lessons. And by the end of that week, they were already teaching him how to do bumps.
An amazing skier. Of course, he was always doing the double black diamonds, and
He was one of the best skiers I've ever seen in my life.
Tim was always 10, 20 feet ahead of us, doing the daring things and coming off these drops. And after he's down there waiting for us, he'd look at Susan and I and go, "It's easy. Come on."
he would just point his skis straight down the black diamonds and just let it rip.
I say I've skied with him, not really. I've gone up with him and watched him put those skis straight down and go straight down the mountain.
He was always so fast, and the boys, of course, got real fast, climbing up places that didn't even have lifts.
I think out of all of us, Tim by far outdid us all. He left us in the dust. And after a while, he would go off and ski on his own because we were kind of slowing him up a little bit.
Morning to Tim was 10, 11 o'clock.
We never hit the slopes particularly early in the morning, but we always stayed until they closed the lifts, and you had to ski all the way down Telluride Trail. We were so exhausted, we never actually left the Columbia. We were still in ski boots, ski clothes, hadn't showered, and we just went right from drinks to dinner because we just were so exhausted.